What is the worst thing that has happened at a high school reunion party that you attended? My 10-year and my husband's 10-year were both in the same weekend. We decided to do his because it was well organized and looked like fun, plus we hadn't been back there in quite some time. They hired a little party boat to cruise around the lake for 2 hours. Prior to that, they had a meet up across from the lake for lunch and a happy hour bar hop. The festivities started around noon. Boarding was at 10 and everything was supposed to be over at midnight except those that wanted to do an after party. Problem 1. The lake they picked was 45 minutes away from the area they all lived. People had to find their own rides, which was a bit of an issue since many didn't have vehicles. Eventually, most people that wanted to come were able to carpool. However, a couple cars were pulled over on the way because they had been pre-gaming and shouldn't have been driving, or the passengers were throwing empties out on the highway. Yes, this was in the middle of the afternoon. Problem 2. Lunch and happy hour were the responsibility of the individuals. Not everyone believed they should pay, so some people ran up tabs in the name of the school's class of 2005 reunion and then ghosted. The restaurant and bars got super angry and started stopping any patrons that said they were there for a reunion and held them until cops came, even though some of those people didn't add to those tabs. We thankfully had arrived late because we had dinner with some of his friends and only went to the last bar on the list. We had already paid for the drinks we had, so we dipped before they rounded us up too. I heard eventually some of those places were trying to sue the school to get their money. Next, the boat. It wasn't huge. It had a main enclosed area, a small deck on both the front and back connected by a very narrow single-file gangway on either side of the boat, an even smaller standing-only area on the roof, maybe 3 people at a time, and a small sublevel that was strictly off-limits. There was 1 bathroom for each gender. Everyone upon boarding was already pretty tipsy. The cruise was split up so the first 30 minutes were like a where are they now and memoriam, pub quiz thing, etc. Then an hour was unlimited drinks and snacks with dancing and mingling. The snacks were baked goods that had been carried from venue to venue and were frosted in a vibrant bright blue, the school color. The drinks were bright pink. I'm pretty sure it was like pink lemonade powder, Sprite, and cheap vodka. Anyway, things started off a little awkwardly, because the MC was one of those that was stopped for drunk driving. The second in command was held up at the bar, and the third person was already hurling bright blue and pink over the side of the boat. Eventually someone kicked it off and only fumbled about the people who passed away. Bad jokes that no one laughed about, so they got mad and quit. People then found a boombox, turned on music and started mingling and eating more baked goods. We never touched them because they have celiac disease. Suddenly a ton of people started getting sick. I'm talking like 30 of roughly 70 people. It was coming out both ends for some. Remember there was only 1 bathroom for each gender? Yeah, nightmare. We were at the furthest point in the lake by then, so it was going to take a while to get back. It was a mess. The captain only had 1 person on board trying to help, but it was a losing battle. Since that was an enclosed space, the rest of us tried hanging out in the decks to try to get away from the smell and the noise, so we're all scrunched together. I'd gone separated from my husband, but was chatting with people I'd met earlier through him, when a guy came up and started being like, I don't remember your name, but I'd never forget your beautiful face, kind of thing. Jokingly, I was pretending to be shocked and said we'd been in the same class since kindergarten, and we even dated in junior high, etc. The people I talked to were playing along, all saying they were surprised he doesn't remember me, that I was even prom queen. The guy says he's going to get us all apology drinks and then disappears. But then my husband found us and brought us more drinks and is telling us about this guy that's bragging to anyone who will listen about how he's taking home this hot chick. We all just kind of left it off, saying several other people said something similar about their spouses too. Drank the drinks and started dancing because someone brought the boombox outside. While my husband was dancing with me, out of nowhere the guy from before materializes and starts telling my husband to get off his woman. He then grabs me and is saying something about finding a space of our own when we're yelling at him that it's my husband and he needs to back off. The guy puffs up like he's going to swing, then gets weirdly quiet and apologizes, says no hard feelings and passes out the drinks. It was pretty awkward, so he disappeared again. I have a couple sips and go back to dancing for a bit when I start to feel funny. I tell everyone I need to get some air and start walking down the side of the boat where there's less people. Then I start feeling really dizzy and nauseated. I saw a girl pop out from the enclosure further down and I remember saying something was wrong, but she didn't seem to hear before disappearing. I was trying to use the railing to stay upright and walk back when a buzzed, creepy guy appeared. He said something I don't really remember, but his face was so scary. I'll never forget that face. I turned away from him and almost fell over the railing because my body was not cooperating. He started pulling me by my arms down the boat to where the entrance to the sublevel was, and I was basically a rag doll. I could hardly move. The last thing I remember thinking was that I should grab something or yell something, but nothing was working properly. I believe I passed out right around then. It's really lucky I did because they think that going full dead weight caused him to stumble and fall, knocking him out. When I came to, I was inside a hospital. The girl that I saw went to find someone who knew me, and when they found me, I was turning blue. I was having seizures. The hospital told me I was dosed with GHB. They wound up keeping me an entire day because I was also covered in hives and they weren't sure why. The creep also went to the hospital for some serious damage to him that occurred before police arrived, and over half the people on the boat had contracted norovirus from suspected contaminated baked goods. Creep was eventually charged with a whole host of things, pleaded down, was sentenced to 18 months and only wound up serving about 9 weeks because of overcrowding. If he hadn't been allowed to plead down a couple felony charges, he would have been in prison for 50 years supposedly. So that's the criminal justice system for you. Basically, I'll never attend any kind of reunion again, and I avoid going back there whenever possible. Wow, that went from 0 to 100 real quick. Story 2. At my 10-year high school reunion, we had a decent turnout. Maybe 100 plus people. We were at a pretty nice hotel banquet hall. There was one guy I had known all throughout high school, and he was a well-known I'll call him Chris for the story. I see Chris walk into the banquet hall, stop in his tracks, turn around in a very slow 360-degree circle, surveying the entire room. He just says, "Whoa," and he looks visibly alarmed. He stops and his eyes settle on me. I say, "Hey Chris, long time no see, man." He kind of slides over to me and whispers in my ear, "This is really weird. I'm pretty sure I know every single person in this room." That is when I realize he's wearing the same clothes as all the banquet hall workers. Oh my God, Chris is working as a server at his own high school reunion, and he has no clue what is happening. I walk him out to the front lobby and explain it's our 10-year high school reunion. He is mortified, beyond embarrassed. He was never contacted and didn't even realize it had been 10 years since we graduated. He just knew he was working another catering gig in a never-ending series of catering gigs. I made him take me to his manager. I explain what is happening and tell the manager there is no way this guy's working his own high school reunion. Awesomely, the manager agrees. We find a different suit jacket and tie for him, and I take Chris back to the party. He ended up having a good night. Wow, you did him a solid. That's pretty nice of you. Story 3. The people who were supposed to plan our high school reunion dropped the ball, so I figured it wouldn't happen. But then this other dude from our high school stepped up to plan it. He was in a graduate program and also working part-time at a banquet hall, and he said that his boss would give us the banquet hall space for free. It was a really nice gesture, and he seemed really into it. He had been miserable in high school. Grumpy, sullen, unpleasant, mean to other people. He came out in college, so maybe the weight of having to keep it a secret was part of why he was so unpleasant. Maybe he'd be more fun now. I was working a crappy job and had no savings at the time, so I was neither interested in having my former classmates pity me, nor was I gunning to shell out a lot of money to attend. Plus, my crappy ex might be there, and that didn't feel worth it. The organizer made a Facebook event and asked people to Venmo him the cost of admission prior to attending. He wanted something like $15 to $20 a head. I can't remember. Anyway, it didn't really feel worth paying for. Maybe if there would be some drinks included or something, I would go for an hour. I sent him a private message asking what the admissions ticket covered. Food, drinks, the space was free after all. He posted publicly on the Facebook page that if the cost of admission was too steep, message me and we can work out some financial aid. What? I then publicly posted asking what the admission cost covered. No response. Other people asked too. He said it would go towards having a bartender and server dedicated to the event space, as well as towards food. Okay, fair. Folks, he was the server. My friend showed up, having not yet paid him, and he barred her entry. The people who had paid the admission cost showed up to an empty banquet hall, were given a menu by their former classmate and told to order their own food and drink from him. He pocketed the admission ticket money as his fee. After an hour, he bought out one grocery store sheet cake for 75 people to share. That was it. Sounds like he was out for some petty revenge for a crappy time in high school and profited from it. Enjoying the video so far? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel so you wouldn't miss out on any of my future uploads. Story 4. My 10-year reunion ended itself before it happened. Turns out our class president, traditionally in charge of organizing, took a hard turn into a footloose character after high school. Highlights of her event planning include no alcohol allowed, not even BYOB. A few classmates in a reasonably successful band offered to play for free. She was adamant there would be no music or dancing. Plus ones were spouses only. 2 guys happily told they'd bring their husbands, and she kicked them both from the Facebook page. The venue was the high school soccer field, in Iowa, in August. We were welcome to bring our own chairs. A few people offered to bring beanbags and bocce and similar games. She said no, because it would make the reunion too much like tailgating. Suggested entertainment was a guided tour of the school, which had undergone zero change since we graduated. Catering was from Hy-Vee, which is a grocery store. Their food is actually okay, but tickets were $60. It was ultimately canceled because out of our class of 300, less than 10 people bought tickets. A few things to clear up. This was eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City region, which makes the sudden footloose morals all the weirder. It's a pretty liberal area. I cast no judgment in Hy-Vee catering. Put down the pitchforks. Their food is good, just not $60 worth of good. I sadly couldn't come up with the name of the band, short of messaging dudes I haven't talked to in 20 years. Looks like they haven't been active in quite a while. A bunch of people who stayed local did indeed pick a bar on a Saturday night to meet up, and had much immoral. Rumor has it there was even karaoke. It makes a good story, but I'm ultimately sad for her event planner. I got the impression that she really needed everyone to see that she was the most good person who was doing everything right, and that she hadn't been in control of something in a long, long time. I hope she's doing better now. Story 5. So far, it was the only thing that happened at my high school reunion. 10th reunion. Graduating class of 850, more or less. Well-funded high school. Every class has a trust fund to fund reunions. A good friend of mine was our treasurer and organized it via Facebook. We started big. Ballroom. Setting for 1,000. Figured spouses, etc. A year out, lots of interest. Definitely not 1,000 people interest. Started to scale back. 6 months out, less interest. Lots of people reconnected via Facebook and lost the drive to actually care. Scaled back more. 3 months out was deadlines for attendance. The school's alumni association would dispense the funds based on class size and allotment for the milestone. We hadn't put a deposit down because the target kept moving on attendance. 2 months out, my friend finalizes and does a formal cutoff. She had kept taking anything for a month due to lack of interest. Day of, it's at a local bar, not a small bar either. Good food, rented the entire place for a Friday night at that. 25-ish alumni showed out of 150 RSVPs, with spouses or whatever was around 40 people. That was the worst part, knowing so few people actually give a damn, but the best part was the treasurer smirked the entire night. The school had allotted $50 per person for this. $50 per person, plus guests. $15,000 with instructions to pay everything fully. We drank and ate our bums off to the point of almost being Roman. The bill was $7,500 between food and rental. She paid the bill, then handed everyone $100 from the envelope, and then handed the rest of the envelope to the manager and was like, "Here's the tip." So roughly $3,000 for the waitstaff and crew. Pretty memorable and honestly not that big of a bummer. But holy crap, people just don't care. Story 6. Someone I knew from school tried to arrange an unofficial reunion as the school wasn't going to do one. He was socially inept, so would say and do odd things which people picked up on a lot. But his heart was always in the right place. He put in a lot of effort. But very few people responded at all. Those that did mostly made snide comments about the event behind their back, like dissing the location, etc. Some made fun of them personally too, as he was doing some admittedly odd, over-the-top organizing. Then close to the event, he cancels and blows up sending everyone a justified message about how they can all go suck a fart, and he was just trying to do something nice and wanted to catch up with people. That was received with more snide remarks too. He passed away unexpectedly just a few months later from a heart attack. He was a very large person, which seems to have contributed. I'm not sure if many people from the reunion know or not. I found out on Facebook as he was a friend on there. This was a 15-year reunion, so 30 or 31-year-olds, UK. I'm from the UK, so maybe our reunions here are different to the US. Most of the people who didn't reply seem to be the more decent people, and coincidentally, the ones who have moved away or just moved on in their lives. Those who did were mostly the ones who still spent every week at the same bars with their same school friends. When it was canceled, they all actually went out the same night for drinks, but didn't invite the organizer. Story 7. 10-year reunion invite came up, and I thought, yeah, looks like it could be fun. I noticed the venue is a fancy restaurant. Disappointed, expecting some sort of party. Room is very limited. For a class of over 100, you would think they would have picked a venue with over 25 capacity. I started reaching out to all the friends I've kept in touch with. Not one of them was even remotely interested in going. My old high school best friend suggested we catch up at his and drank instead. Haven't seen him in years, so I ball in the reunion. Turns out almost no one went. One of the girls that organized the thing was begging my mate to go because she was so embarrassed how little people had RSVP'd. She ended up bailing herself. Turns out for the 10 people that actually went, half of which organized it, they had to be split up since they booked a place that was not intended for large groups of people. And ironically, the same group that organized it took it upon themselves to organize our end-of-school formal, Aussie for prom. They decided for themselves that we didn't want to go with the original plan and completely replanned it without really consulting the general student body. So many people bailed on it that they had to start inviting ex-students. Dropped out, changed schools, expelled. Takes some real stuff to get expelled from a Catholic school in Australia, just to meet the minimum capacity the venue required to move forward with the date. Honestly, I know they meant well, but this group ruined the formal for a lot of people. I don't know why I expected anything good from their reunion. Apparently the after-party was wild, though. Someone almost got thrown off the boat, literally into the water at 2 a.m. To answer a few questions I'm sure that's on your mind, the after-party was of the formal, and the after-party is called the kick-ons. I'm sure the restaurant could have catered to 10 people. I assume some rocked up unannounced. If you get expelled from a Catholic school, at least in Australia, you cannot attend any other Catholic school. My school, at least, was hesitant to expel as a result. They told us this, but I can't remember if it was because they wanted to keep kids in Catholic schools, or if it was because we were preparing for the HSC, Aussie version finals. Story 8. Went to my high school reunion. I honestly don't know why I did. The friends I kept in touch with, well, I kept in touch with. But one friend managed to convince me otherwise, and so I went. The reunion wasn't bad. It was mostly people trying their best to one-up each other in their bid to look successful. I sat down at the table next to my friend where I was actually enjoying my time catching up with long-forgotten acquaintances. During the reunion, there were two people who stood out the most. There was this chick that I barely recognized. My friend and I kept asking each other if she was in our graduating class or a spouse of one. Found out later that she spent close to $80,000 for cosmetic surgery, hence being unidentifiable. She was so proud of herself that nobody was able to recognize her. Seriously, she could have been a candidate on Botched. But who was I to pop her bubble? The other guy was a guy who was so snooty back in high school. We're talking the cliche, if your address wasn't within a certain neighborhood, you weren't good enough to acknowledge, kind of snobbery. Well, he arrived late for the dinner portion, and all the seats at his old friend's table were already taken, so he suddenly sat down with the likes of us. Yikes, having to sit with people you looked down on all your teenage life? The poor man. So I took pity on him because most of the people at the table probably remembered his attitude as well and ignored him. I started asking him questions, of how he fared since graduation, etc. This was our conversation while the DJ was blasting music and others were yelling over the din to be heard within their own chats. So, what are you doing now, Snob? The name of guy was changed to protect the innocent. Snob. I work at Smith, a Smith & Smith attorney law firm. Not a real company, but you get the gist. Me. That's impressive. Are you a lawyer? Studying to be a lawyer? Snob. No, I'm working on it. Me. Oh, articling at your law firm? Snob. No. Me. You work at Smith, Smith & Smith, so what exactly is it that you do? Movie moment. I kid you not. The DJ cut the music so that the MC could make the announcement that dinner was to be served shortly, but before that happened, Snob got frustrated with all my questions and stated loudly into the unexpected silence, I'm a mailroom clerk. Everyone stared and, hated to say this, accidental justice was served. Snob was taken down a peg or two by his own hands. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.